We're going to start with Marcus Garvey's beginnings, and we'll discuss that.
Marcus Garvey was born into the racial inequities of the colonial system of Jamaica. He decided to fight for change when he read the autobiography of Booker T. Washington, an educator whose message was self-reliance and self-help through education and economics.
All of those things actually make sense to Garvey in Jamaica. They make sense to a Garvey who's wrestling with the effects of colonialism, racial self-hatred and self-loathing that the colonial system imposed upon black people in Jamaica.
In 1914, while in Jamaica, Garvey organized the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, to build up racial pride and develop educational and economic opportunities for blacks.
He had these high aspirations for building this universal, this worldwide organization to empower people of African descent.
2 years later, Garvey came to the United States and established the UNIA in New York City's Harlem.
There were at least 700 chapters of the UNIA in the United States by 1921 through 1924. There were over 1,000 chapters of the UNIA throughout the world. Garvey was a master showman and a master organizer.
Marcus Garvey was a Caribbean American who would come to reshape the meanings of African America.
Garvey spoke boldly about self-respect and pride in African heritage, a message that appealed to many African Americans frustrated with the violence and disenfranchisement they faced in the United States.
Marcus Garvey obviously has one of the largest mass movements in the 20th century. Definitely the largest of people of African descent.
I'm going to give it to Theas in just a second. I want y'all to really pay attention between these two parts. The similarity is cringy. That's how I found it. Because the two parties were put together for the same cause. And unfortunately, the downfall of the two parties were basically on the same reasons. But this is Thea's wheelhouse. He knows more about it than I do. So take it away, Thea.
Yeah. I love, as they call him, Messiah Garvey, because I believe his real name was Marcus Messiah Garvey. So, even from his beginnings, his family had great faith in what this man would become. But the cool thing, like a couple quick hits on him, like I said, born in Jamaica, he wasn't privileged. He was just a normal black person in Jamaica dealing with the colorism and colonialization of Jamaica. But he wasn't at the bottom, I guess you could say, right? But he saw and he encountered that racism, and when a lot of the things you hear from me, like when I say uncentering whiteness and having love and pride in who and what you are, I get that from Garveyism, right? Now, for those who are familiar with the term of Pan-Africanism, Marcus Garvey is the father of Pan-Africanism, okay? So one of the big things about the UNIA was not just Black people have love for yourself, have respect for yourself, understand that the situation you're in is not of your making. It is simply what has been forced upon you. So now why are you going to react the way they're trying to force you to react instead of understanding that you are being attacked? Now rise up and be, what you need to be to shrug this off and fight back, right? He was like that first part of the separatist movement that we recognize. Now, I am a person who says that the movement is eternal, like the movement, capital M, is eternal, and that the energy flows. So if you go all the way back to the Gabriel slave revolt, to the Nat Turners, you just bring it all the way forward, that same energy, that same spirit of we are oppressed, we are not less than, we are being set upon, right? That spirit flows through. So you get a Garvey, and he comes to America right? So he leaves his homeland. One of the lessons that oftentimes we have to learn is that it's not that you're not doing well. It's not that you're failing. It's not that you're not up to the task. It may be that you need to change locations to achieve what it is that you are destined to do. You can't always do it from your safe zone. You can't always do it from where you're most comfortable. So he left Jamaica, comes to America, goes to the Mecca of Black people at that time, which was New York, and he goes and he goes through his stumbles and all of those things, but he builds the largest Black organization in history in America, right? I mean, we're talking about, like, if you look at some like the Masonic orders and things like that, how they have their garb, you know, he had that. He brought that to people, and his focus wasn't about like religion. His focus was about identity. It's about, you are a mighty race. Stop allowing yourself to view yourself through the eyes of your oppressor. So that's like one of the things I get really excited when I talk about Garvey, because he was just an amazing man. Complicated man. Did some stuff that was but complicated man on his personal level, but aren't we all? Huh?
Oh, we're gonna get into that one. Because I had another video. I had a video that went into more, that was more detailed than this one, but it was a comic book, or, you know, animated. So I was like, don't think. But we'll get to the end of, I'll still tell you what they said at the end. It was more detailed.
Yeah, but just kind of making it, kind of bridging it, because it's not about basically telling the autobiography of Marcus Garvey. It's about how movements function and how the energy continues. What's good? It's how the energy continues. Like, we're all playing our role in this big, massive movement for autonomy, for advancement, for just being able to compete with everyone, right? Like, I'm a firm advocate for competition. I think that every race, culture, subset, mixed, blend, whatever you segment yourself, we're all competing for resources. We're all competing for the opportunity to self-actualize. We're all competing, and it's good. Competition is good, folks, and everybody can't win at the same time. Okay, just look, for those of you who are sports fans, you know, the Lakers don't hate the Nets, but they compete against them, right? And it's fine to have competition. You even practice with each other. You go out for drinks with each other. You know each other's families. But when it's time to compete for this thing, it's about business, right? And that's healthy. What's not healthy is when one group decides that in order to ensure my victory, I must cause harm to my competition. I'm not outperforming them. I'm actually hurting them so they can't perform with me, because I'm afraid that real competition could either have me lose more often or not achieve what I want. And that's kind of where that dichotomy flows in. But Marcus Garvey's movement, for those of us who kind of touch on this, it moves all the way through. I'm just picking him as a starting point, because if you're familiar with the name Elijah Muhammad, right? Elijah Muhammad, the founder of the Nation of Islam, he was a Garveyite. He grew up under the movement. Malcolm Little, his father was a Garveyite. His mother was a Garveyite. They came up through the Garvey movement, the UNIA. The spirit of love and self-identity was in them, because they learned through that organization. And then we move into the Nation of Islam. They're just doing what Garvey did, but they use religion as more of a catalyst. Because if you can take religion, you can make most people, especially us black folks, because we are very spiritual creatures, you can now give us something to latch onto beyond something, I don't consider it abstract, but some people do, but something as abstract as your color or your nation of or origin, right? So Elijah Muhammad understood that that was a piece that was missing, right? And then when you move past that, you get to Malcolm, right? Most of us know Malcolm's story, okay? And he was out front saying, look, I don't care about what the white folk doing. We gonna do what we need to do for us. And long as you don't bother us, we don't bother you. Everything's cool. Whatever. Stay over there because you're evil, right? Well, when Malcolm was murdered, at the time he was murdered, I want to say, I may have the years off a little bit, but he was murdered, I believe, in 1965. And the Black Panther Party, which is Bobby Seale and Huey Newton, at that time they were like high school age or around that age. They get to college, and their heroes are Malcolm.
You can't tell the whole story.
Huh?
You can't tell the whole story.
Right. No. I'm sorry, but yeah, that's how it all comes together, though. As far as the movements, they're not separate events. They're actually a continuation of our spirit as Black people. That you can trace it all the way back to the motherland.